Tonight on News Hour, experts weigh in as Nigeria's 2025 Tax Act sparks public concern. Torrential downpours submerges Adamawa communities. Katsina demolition victims demand increase in compensation package. And on the foreign scene, Nepal count cost after deadly protest. A very good evening to you and welcome to News Hour on Trust TV. I am Fatima Ahmed Musa and thank you so much for joining us. Now we'll begin with the Nigerian Tax Act 2025, which takes effect on January 1st, 2026, consolidates more than 60 different taxes into one framework. While designed as a landmark reform, it has sparked public concern over possible higher tax burdens, controversial VAT proposals, and the restructuring of revenue agencies. Against this backdrop, Trust TV's Noel Sampson spoke with economists to provide insight on the implications. Take a look.
The former speaker described the reforms as a pact between government and citizens, stressing that trust and transparency are critical to their success.
The Nigerian Tax Act 2025 represents a structural shift towards a modernized, consolidated tax system aligned with international standards. While it promises greater clarity and potentially higher revenue mobilization, its success depends on predictable implementations.
Speaker Abbas Tajuddin, represented by his spokesman, Akin Rotimi, said no nation prospers without a fair and transparent tax system, adding that a vibrant and informed media is vital to strengthening democracy.
For Nigeria, long confronted with the enduring twin challenges of diversifying the economy and addressing widespread poverty, tax reform stands as both a fiscal necessity and a moral imperative.
Sole Assistant to the FIRS Chairman on Tax Policy, Olufemi Olarinde, who represented Dr. Zach Adedeji, disclosed that sensitization campaigns are ongoing to enlighten citizens, noting that the new laws will only take effect after an official order from the Minister of Finance is gazetted.
We are trying to develop instructional materials, information circulars to break it down. Even into small pamphlets that makes it as simple as ABC.
Executive Director of CISLAC, Owa Rafsanjani, expressed support for the reforms but emphasized the need for transparency, accountability, and fairness in implementation.
We all know that Nigeria is losing a lot from illicit financial flow as a result of avoidance and refusing to pay taxes.
Leaders of the NUJFCT Council and the House of Reps press corps also stressed the importance of clear communication, warning that conflicting narratives around petroleum tax, data tax, and the use of NIN for banking are fueling public anxiety.
And under President Bola Tinubu's leadership, we are witnessing bold steps aimed at modernizing and strengthening our tax system. This reform seeks to broaden the tax base, enhance revenue generation, and create a more transparent and efficient framework that encourages compliance and fairness.
So many narratives are being circulated in the public space. As journalists, the mirror of the society and agenda setters, we believe this forum offers a unique opportunity to unpack these gray areas and simplify parliamentary activities for Nigerians.
The new tax framework consolidates 16 statutes into 4 principal acts, simplifying administration, expanding the tax base, and aligning Nigeria's fiscal system with international standards.
Mix-up, but that was a report of a former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Yakubu Dogara, has identified uncertainty, cost, technology and capacity building as a major challenges the federal government must tackle as Nigeria's new tax laws come into effect on January 1st, 2026. Dogara, who also chaired the National Credit Guarantee Company Limited, stated this at the inaugural parliamentarian lecture organized by the House of Representatives Press Corps in Abuja. Now we go back to the earlier report by the Nigerian Tax Act 2025, which takes effect on January 1st, 2026, consolidates more than 60 different taxes into one framework. While designed as a landmark reform, it has sparked public concern over possible higher tax burdens, controversial VAT proposals, and the restructuring of revenue agencies. Against this backdrop, Trust TV's Noel Sampson spoke with economists to provide insight on the implications.
The new tax act is aimed at doubling Nigeria's tax to GDP ratio in the coming years. It exempts low-income earners and small businesses, but introduces a 4% development levy, a minimum 15% tax on large firms, an expanded VAT and digital tax regime, higher capital gains tax, and replaces pioneer status initiatives with tax credits. Despite these assurances, questions remain. How effectively will this act protect low-income earners and small businesses? And how transparent will the system be?
It is progressive in nature. So from what they said, that simply means progressively, the more you make money, the more you pay. However, let's still emphasize on 800,000. So I don't think by the time it is January, with the way the economy is going, I don't think some Nigerians will be under that. That's just. But in terms of small business, yes, Nigeria will be free to an extent.
Some of this 1% of income here, that percent of income here paid for several kind of funds. They have also been scrapped. All of them have been put together into one bowl. 4% of your income tax going for all of those things, so you don't have to make all those payments. What it does is also it has streamlined your tax payment processes. So the level of technicalities involved now has reduced. On paper, it looks very nice. It looks transparent. But again, a system is as transparent as the people who run it. So if the people who are going to run it decides to be dubious, even the system itself cannot fight them.
Another sticking point is the 5% fuel levy, a surcharge on petrol and diesel under the new act. The levy revives an old FEMA law to fund road maintenance and transport infrastructure and excludes kerosene, cooking gas, CNG, and renewables. Economists weigh in on the impact of the levy.
Well, first and foremost, I'm advocating that Nigeria government should stop that tax. At worst, they should reduce it to like at least 1% or 2%. Because what is it 5%? That simply means if I'm buying 1 liter of fuel, as it is now, I'm going to pay 51 naira. If I buy 5 liters, I'm going to pay 255 naira. That is too much cumulatively. Do you know that there are hardly way you can transport that use PMS? It is also hard that for you to do business, to an extent that without you powering your generator and whatever, you have to use all this PMS and what have you to generate. So for me, it's either describe it, because you cannot at this point, start taxing that area too. Though they said it has been there before 2007 that they didn't implement because they are doing fresh subsidy, but also give us that grace to actually breathe.
The issue of the 5% surcharge on petroleum products, that for me, I wouldn't have gone that way. I think we could have dropped that, because what it means is that we are going to increase the cost of energy. Cost of energy will go directly into cost of production and operation of small businesses and other forms of businesses. And what happens afterwards, the price at which you sell your product is your cost plus your margin. So if the cost go up, price will go up. And if price goes up, what's happening? Inflation.
They also addressed how the government intends to eliminate illegal dues by non-state actors and stop unregistered tax agents from exploiting taxpayers.
So you must have a platform whereby those that are collecting on your behalf will be known, so that we can separate people that are fraudulent from people that are real.
To get more people into the tax net, you have to simplify the process of getting into the tax net and the process of paying. So we have to remove as much as possible third parties, so that I don't have to go through different people before I'm able to pay. It makes it easy. The money that gets to the government becomes even more if we eliminate all these people.
According to experts, the Tax Act represents one of Nigeria's boldest fiscal reforms, consolidating more than a dozen outdated tax status while setting a unified framework for personal income tax, corporate tax, VAT, capital gains, and overall fiscal governance. Well, Samson, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Now, a torrential downpour has submerged several communities in Adamawa State, leaving residents to battle floodwaters in their homes. The 5-hour rainfall, which began around 6 a.m., heavily impacted parts of Yola North and Yola South. Among the most affected areas are Police Barracks, Karewa, Jambutu, Rumdebaru, and Bachure. Residents of the areas, some of whom live in high-lying areas, expressed surprise at the unprecedented flooding. In a statement, the Police Public Relations Officer SP Suleiman Yahaya Ngoroje said the Commissioner of Police, Dankombo Morris, has deployed Marine Police for rescue and emergency operations.
So men at work, oh, see our compound. See our old mommy, oh, packing water. This way. Seriously.
A fire outbreak on Tuesday gutted a section of Afriland Towers, which houses a commercial bank branch and other companies in the marina area of Lagos Island. The incident, captured in several videos shared on social media from different angles, showed a thick smoke billowing from the high-rise as panic spread across the busy commercial hub. In one of the clips, some yet-to-be-identified individuals were seen attempting to jump from the story building, while others were rescued with aid of a ladder by residents and passerby. Confirming the incident in a statement signed by the Deputy Controller General Ogabi Olajide, the Lagos State Fire and Rescue Service said its operatives were battling the fire at the 6-story building located on Broad Street. It explained that the fire started in the inverter room in the basement before smoke spread across multiple floors and engulfed the structure. As of press time, no casualties had been officially confirmed. Now, residents of Gofar Saudi quarters in Katsina, whose houses and shops were affected by the ongoing dualization of Central Mosque roundabout to Waterboard roundabout, are calling for an upward review of the compensation paid to them. They say the amounts given are grossly inadequate to purchase alternative houses or shops in other parts of Katsina City. Abdullah Yamadi reports.
Over 1.5 billion naira has reportedly been expended on compensation for those affected by the Gofar Saudi to Waterboard Runabout Dualization Project, the highest payout since Governor Dikko Rada assumed office. But many beneficiaries argue that the money received falls far short of expectations, noting that it cannot buy even a plot of land in Gofar Saudi or elsewhere in Katsina. Some of the emotionally distressed beneficiaries, however, expressed confidence that Governor Rada, once aware of their grievances, would take steps to address them.
I have orphans and my house was affected. I was compensated, but finding another house with that money has been very difficult.
We are
happy with the governor's projects, but what we received cannot buy us another house. We only ask for an upward review. We commend our listening governor, but what was paid as compensation is inadequate. We need adjustments so we can have a sense of belonging. Meanwhile, hundreds of people with temporary structures along the project site fear losing their livelihoods if government support is not extended to them. Most are petty traders and low-income owners who cannot afford to rent shops elsewhere. Those of us with temporary structures are happy with the project, but we plead with the governor to consider us. We are low-income owners, and this business is all we have. The state government maintains that compensation was paid based on fairness and the value of affected structures. To address complaints, it has set up a committee to review grievances. However, officials insist that owners of temporary structures were not considered under the compensation framework.
This compensation that we paid over the weekend is the highest amount of money that this administration, not only this administration, that has ever been paid as compensation for road construction in Katsina State. And for now, officially, we don't have any formal complaint. That's something that I should also mention. So our assumption is that everything is okay. And when there is any reason to complain, what you normally do is to write. In the past, people have written complaining about the payment we make to them. And in all the cases, the Grievances Redress Committee will revisit those locations and reassess. And in most of the cases, we assign officers that were not involved in the first assessment, earlier assessment, to go and reassess the place. And then we compare these assessments.
Despite these challenges, many Katsina residents continue to express support for Governor Dikko Radda's Building the Future policies, which they believe will accelerate socio-economic development in the state. Abdullahi Izuma Yamadi, Trust Television News, Katsina.
Now to security matters. 3 commanders of the ISWAP terrorist group have been killed by troops of the Nigerian military during the terrorist attempted ambushed in Cross-Kawa axis of the Lake Chad region. They were identified as Modu Dogon Munzir of Dogon Chukung, an unidentified Munzir, and one Abu Aisha Kaid of Tombong Mota. 8 other terrorists were also neutralized in the foiled ambush, which saw the terrorists detonate a command improvised explosive device on Monday. According to Operation Hatankai Charter Command, troops of Section 3 were on a scanning and picketing patrol along Baga, Cross-Cow, a known supply routes of the terrorists in Kukawa local government area. It added that a gun battle ensued after the bomb blast, forcing the terrorists to flee with varying degrees of injuries, leading to the recovery of 14 motorcycles, AK-47 rifles with magazines, rounds of 7.62 mm special ammunition, anti-aircraft, several blankets and other sun-dry items including drugs. Now, troops of 6th Brigade Nigerian Army Sector 3 Operation Wild Stroke have neutralized 2 terrorists and recovered a cache of arms and ammunition in Takum local government area of Taraba State. The troops are working under Operation Lafia Nakowa, which was formed to eliminate terrorist and criminal activities across the state. The Acting Deputy Director, Army Public Relations, the 3 Division Nigerian Army, Lieutenant Colonel Aliu Danja, said the troops received credible intelligence regarding a planned attack on the Chenchengi community by the Bojo terrorist group. According to him, the troops swiftly deployed to the area and engaged the terrorist group. He said during an exchange of gunfire, some of the terrorists were forced to retreat into the forest. Now, the Nigerian Army has confirmed the capture of a notorious commander of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, and his armed wing, the Eastern Security Network, ESN, Ifeanyi Eze Okorenta, widely known as Gentle Diahu. Troops of the 34 Artillery Brigade, in collaboration with other security agencies, apprehended Okorenta at his hideout in Aku Ihube, Okigwe local government area of Imo State. The military reported that the operation resulted in seizure of a cache of weapons and other items, including English pistol, 120 rounds of 7.62 mm special ammunition, 25 rounds of 7.62 mm NATO, a cartridge, 6 mobile phones, military and police uniforms, and a German flag. Troops also uncovered a workshop used for dismantling stolen vehicles for resale and destroyed 10 motorcycles found at the scene. Beyond the Imo operation, troops carried out coordinated missions in Adamawa, Katsina, and Kogi State, rescuing 11 kidnapped victims. Now, the Department of State Service has filed a 5-count charge against African Action Congress presidential candidate Omoyele Sowore. The charges filed at the Federal High Court in Abuja also list social media platforms Xcore and Meta, owners of X and Facebook, as defendants. The DSS is accusing Sowore of posting false and defamatory statements about President Bola Tinubu on his X and Facebook accounts. Comments, it says, could incite public unrest. The agency had earlier given Sowore 1-week ultimatum to delete the post, which expired without compliance. Meanwhile, Sowore said he will be available whenever the case is assigned for trial. Now, President Bola Tinubu returned to Abuja on Tuesday, 2 days ahead of the conclusion of his annual leave, which would have been on September 19th. The presidential jet Air Force 001 touched down at the presidential wing of the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, at about 6:50 p.m. local time. The president will have his hands full as he assumes duty on Wednesday. For one, the 6-month emergency rule imposed on Rivers State expires on Thursday. On March 18th, President Bola Tinubu declared a state of emergency in Rivers State following a protracted political crisis between the governor Siminalayi Fubara and Minister of the Federal Capital Territory Nyesom Wike. The FCT minister had the majority of the state lawmakers on his side and an impeachment process was in motion. But what brought things to a head was the blowing up of oil installations purportedly by militants. In proclaiming the 6-month state of emergency, President Tinubu said the state security situation and political tension necessitated his intervention to foster a total breakdown of law and order. The president promptly swore in Vice Admiral Ebok Ete Abbas as a former chief of naval staff as the sole administrator of Rivers State. 6 months down the line, President Tinubu may choose to extend the state of emergency or may choose to end it in an alignment with his powers as outlined in Section 305 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 as amended. In line with the relevant section of the Constitution, there are roles the President will play to bring the saga to an end. The President is required to make a nationwide broadcast suspending the state of emergency and normalizing all other functions that were affected by the proclamation of emergency. Furthermore, President Tinubu will sign the decree suspending emergency rule, which he cannot do from outside the country. There has been a raging debate about handover procedures, which could lead to political instability in the state if the transition isn't handled smoothly. A school of thought believes that the governor does not need to take a new oath since he was suspended and not impeached, arguing that the process of his return has nothing to do with the National Assembly, and so it makes no difference whether the legislature is in recess or not. The argument is that the sole administrator will only need to hand over to either the secretary to the state government or the head of service on Wednesday evening for power to be transferred seamlessly to Fubara on Thursday. Another school of thought has argued that the president does not need to make any national broadcast to enable Fubara's return, although precedent does not support this. In the past instance, during the administration of former President Olusegun Obasanjo and Goodluck Jonathan, the leaders not only made nationwide broadcasts to lift the state of emergency, but also signed the decree lifting the emergency rule. Apart from the emergency rule situation, presidency sources have hinted that the president's earlier return could be tied to the need for him to prepare to participate in the 80th session of the UN General Assembly, UNGA 80, which opened on Tuesday, 9 September 2025. The first day of the high-level general debate will begin on Tuesday, 23 September 2025. It is protocol that President Tinubu will depart Abuja for New York 2 days before the high-level general debate, which may be sometime over the weekend. Now, Nigeria's reading culture is weakening, raising questions about the country's future in education and knowledge. With literacy rates slipping year after year, schools and libraries are now being challenged to step up. Globally, Nigeria also trails behind countries that continue to invest in lifelong reading habits. The report.
Recently, the world marked International Literacy Day under the theme of promoting literacy in a digital era. But in Nigeria, the numbers tell a worrying story. The literacy rate has dropped from 63.16% in 2021 to 59.97% in 2024, according to UNESCO estimates. By comparison, the global literacy average is about 87%, and countries like South Africa and Egypt have literacy levels above 70% and 75% respectively. Nigeria now ranks among the lower-tier nations on literacy. At the heart of this discussion are public libraries. The National Library's Apex branch in Abuja is the country's main reference hub. Management says it is working to keep knowledge accessible and relevant.
People coming to use our library space here. So, and they make use of our resources because, as you know, we are a depository library. So their information, their resources, you can find anywhere except the National Library. So far for me, it's on the average. If I'm to class it, it's on the average for me. And I think the library in Nigeria are doing great.
Yet, many users feel the library lacks modern resources and facilities to meet current needs.
That make people not to come is the environment. You can see it for yourself. The infrastructure is totally, in fact, it's not inviting. It's not something that can make someone interested to read because of the environment. There's an AC. We hardly use light sometimes. When you come in at 9 a.m., you find out there's no lights. They turn it on maybe at 10 a.m. and turn it off at 5 p.m. So these are some of the reasons.
Experts argue that libraries alone cannot reverse this trend. Schools must also do more to foster reading habits and make them part of daily learning.
Yes, it's e-library. That is the electronic library where they can access books online. Maybe they might not know about the book. Maybe we'll just give them the name when they go home. If they have their personal PC, that is computer, they will just log in, search for their book, read it. If they like, they might even print it. We have books, so many books online that they are very interested and very, very enjoying when you read them.
So schools need to educate our parents very well on the need to introduce learners to reading right from their very early age. Even when they can't read, parents can start reading to them such that when they have the skill, the competence required to start reading, they will also develop the love for reading. Because if a child is exposed early to reading, it's going to improve their cognitive ability, it's going to improve their vocabulary, then it's going to make them social beings instead of them being on social media, that they will not be able to relate with people in their physical environment.
Students themselves believe schools should rethink how they approach reading, making it less of a chore and more of a habit worth keeping.
Some they prefer to read for entertainment, storybooks, novels. Others they like to learn, factual books. Others they read to improve themselves, self-help, general knowledge, and so on. So to get people to want to read more, you have to be geared towards what they want to read, not necessarily what you need them to.
I think maybe schools should have maybe they should create a time where they'll maybe give an interview to every student and find out about their interests, what they like reading, what troubles them, why can't they read, something to motivate them and guide them into reading, so we'll be able to build a brighter future.
Nigeria's literacy crisis is not just about numbers. It reflects how much value the society places on knowledge. Reversing the decline will depend on a collective effort by schools, libraries, families, and policymakers to rebuild a culture where reading is seen as a lifelong pursuit. Nadia Busari, Trust TV News, Abuja.
You're still watching News Hour on Trust TV. Coming up, 30 years on, Ken Saro-Wiwa's remembrance sparks fresh calls for environmental justice in Niger Delta. More news won't return. Just stay with us. Welcome back if you're just joining. This is News Hour on Trust TV. In case you missed it, here's a recap of our top stories again. We told you that experts weigh in as Nigeria's 2025 Tax Act sparks public concern. And torrential downpours submerges Adamawa communities. Moving on, the People's Democratic Party, PDP, has said the ruling All Progressives Congress, APC, is in a panic mode ahead of the 2027 elections. The National Publicity Secretary of the party, Debo Ologunagba, said this while addressing newsmen on Monday in Abuja. Ologunagba also alleged that the APC is shopping endorsement for President Bola Tinubu. He equally accused the APC and its members of engaging in early campaign in violation of the 2022 Electoral Act.
A recalibration of our party in the last few months, about 3-4 months ago, when we begin to put our acts together, has sent in so much jitters to the presidency and, of course, to President Tinubu. And that's why you see the rush and the anxiety to begin to have what we describe as abandonment of governance to early campaigns. Clearly against the Electoral Act. You can see, we are all witnesses to even the frustration of INEC, when they've expressed that, look, this early campaign and then heating up the polity is such that even as regulators, they are worried. But when you have a government that is bent on that too, and the reason for these behaviors because the APC, President Tinubu, the jittery about the way that the calibration of this party and the fact that the PDP that is well known to Nigerians back on the saddle, doing what it knows how to do best. But beyond that, what we have found in this country is the fact that rather than build institutions, we try to build strong men.
Still on political matters, as the world marks the International Democracy Day, stakeholders in Nigeria's civil society space are calling for renewed efforts to strengthen democracy, not just as a system of governance, but also as a driver of development. To this end, the Center for Democracy and Development, CDD, has expressed concern over the rising number of uncollected permanent voter cards, warning that it poses a looming crisis for the nation's democracy. Habibat Ajayi completes this report.
As Nigeria edges closer to the 2027 general elections, concerns over voters' participation are growing. Stakeholders reflected on the state of democracy through the lenses of recent events, including the 2025 by-elections, the ongoing continuous voter registration exercise, and preparations for the Anambra off-cycle governorship poll. The CDD cautioned that millions of Nigerians risk disenfranchisement if uncollected voters' cards remain unattended, stressing that the 2027 elections will be a critical test of the country's democratic resilience.
The report we are releasing makes recommendations, and those recommendations is that INEC must improve the technological infrastructures, logistics, and voter outreach strategies towards the 2027 elections.
While acknowledging the complex challenges facing elections in Nigeria, speakers urged citizens to remain hopeful and patriotic in the pursuit of a credible democratic process.
Citizens have a bigger role than simply expressing their votes. That they need to understand as citizens that the vote is their mandate and that there are forces that are determined to deny them their mandate. And it was in that context that mandate protection became very central to the work CDD was doing in elections.
The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, also came under criticism, with calls for the commission to refund funds allocated for voters' education ahead of the 2023 elections, which stakeholders allege was not effectively carried out.
We had to be changing some, tactics overnight. Visiting Anambra Broadcasting Corporation, changing the language and all of that to door-to-door campaign of saying, please go and cast your vote. Because if you don't cast your vote, nothing will happen. Now we are coming again. And I think we need to be able to, hold our leaders accountable, hold INEC accountable, civil society organizations as you are working. We need to walk along the line, but we are not government. The money that is voted for issues should be released and those work should be conducted.
Participants further advised citizens and policymakers to confront the root causes undermining electoral credibility.
Like 2023 election, many of us will now realize that prior to the election, we had massive fuel scarcity. On top of Naira, no Naira. But it's INEC will blame for those two things because, it's election. But INEC won't print money. Neither do INEC produce fuel. We know the people that should be responsible for that. So I think we need to start doing that. Let's bring them out from the hole they are hiding.
Meanwhile, the CDD's Election Analysis Center has announced Victor Adetula as its new chairperson, reaffirming its commitment to ensuring that democracy translates into real development for Nigerians. Habibat Ajayi, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Nigeria's First Lady, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, has emphasized that strengthening family values is critical to addressing Nigeria's security challenges. Speaking at the opening of Exercise Haskebu 2025 at the Armed Forces Command and Staff College, Jaji, Kaduna, Mrs. Tinubu, represented by the wife of the Vice President, Hajia Nana Shatima, said the family remains the bedrock of society and a vital pillar of national stability. She warned that the erosion of family values is fueling insecurity and social vices such as cultism, drug abuse, prostitution, and extremist ideologies. Trust TV's Bello Musa completes this report.
Representing the First Lady at the opening of Exercise Haskebu, the wife of the Vice President Nana Shatima, while delivering a keynote address on the theme Family and National Security, urged religious and traditional leaders to intensify effort in teaching young people the right principles of faith and reinforcing positive values.
National security creates a stable environment where families can strive, economies can grow, and the future can be built. However, these days, the family unit is no longer what it used to be. Many parents, while striving to make ends meet, abandon their parental responsibility, thereby leaving their children to raise themselves.
Kaduna State Governor Senator Ubasani, represented by his deputy Hadiza Balarabe, also emphasized the need for collaboration to tackle insecurity.
In a world of complex and fluid threats, security cannot be achieved by acts of security agencies alone. It is only through synergy, both within and beyond the security cycle, that effectiveness in operations can be achieved.
Earlier, the Commandant of the Armed Forces Command and Staff College Jaji, Air Vice Marshal Hassan Idris, explained that Exercise Haskebu 2025 is a multi-agency training program designed to sharpen responses to internal security threats and low-intensity conflict. He said the family and security theme was deliberately chosen to remind participants that the battle against insecurity begins at home.
This iteration will therefore cover both the kinetic and non-kinetic line of operation, with a slight emphasis on the non-kinetic. This is because operational and tactical kinetic successes will only work to achieve sustainable political end states if reinforced by societal acceptance.
The Sultan of Sokoto, Muhammad Saad Abubakar III, raised concerns over corruption, illicit drugs, and unchecked digital content undermining societal values. On his part, Reverend Joseph Hayab, who represented Bishop Matthew Kuka, stressed the need to uphold family values as a foundation for national development.
When illicit resources begin to seep into the delicate fabric of our collective existence, they proceed to generate a new dynamic that undermines the very foundation upon which the society is predicated. It equally destroys discipline and hard work and promotes haughtiness and self-delusion.
We don't focus on helping children to know those family values of love and respect. And that's why young children start seeing everybody as an enemy. And when they start seeing everybody as an enemy, the chances is that criminals can hijack, recruit them, and turn them to be weapons that they will use to destroy society.
Running from September 15 to October 3rd, the exercise features strategic lectures, operational drills, case studies, field demonstrations, and an interactive day in the life of a soldier session for civilians. Bello Musa, Trust TV News Kaduna.
As Nigeria marks the 30th anniversary of the execution of environmental activist Ken Saro Wiwa, calls for justice and environmental accountability are growing louder. Chairman of the Ken Saro-Wiwa 30th Anniversary Planning Committee, Dr. Nimo Basi, condemned the worsening state of the Niger Delta, warning that the government inaction and corporate irresponsibility are threatening lives, livelihood, and the nation's moral fabric. The report.
Speaking at a press briefing ahead of commemorative events, Dr. Basi painted a grim picture of life in the Niger Delta, describing it as a picture of hell.
Oil companies are held to account for pollution accumulated over the decades and made to pay up for the cleanup before they can now negotiate how to divest and hand over to new entities. How could you leave legacy pollution of 70 years and suddenly I come to the community and I see a new signboard, a new logo, and you go back to go back home and say, well, I'm not responsible for that, and this is completely unacceptable. It's a very terrible situation, and government should do something about it.
Celestine Apobare, a prominent Ugboni-born environmental campaigner and executive director of the Meteco Environmental Development Initiative, also delivered a critique of the Nigerian government's neglect of the Niger Delta and warned of looming civil actions if justice continues to be denied.
All the money being spent in this country until recently came from the Niger Delta. I'm not sure that you have passed a night in any Niger Delta community. For over 7 decades, 70 years, you keep making a community bleeding to the point where there is no community in Niger Delta that has a pipe on water. No one that has electricity. I mean, that is the height of wickedness against a people. How can you be taking something from somewhere and you put nothing back? And even when they talk, you kill them. What offense did Ken Saro-Wiwa committed? He did not commit any offense than to say, come and clean up your mess and put something back in a community where you have taken so much. And you came up on that November 10, 1995 to choose blood over oil, to choose oil over blood. That oil was greater and bigger than blood.
Residents say the once travel region, famed for its rich natural resources, vibrant agriculture, and healthy aquatic life, have been reduced to a devastated waterland, poisoned by decades of oil exploration and government-led oil. Prince Edebo, Resource Justice Manager for Social Action, described the situation as critical, declaring that there is no life left in the Niger Delta.
So you find that the entire Nigerian people want an environment that has life in it. As it is right now, currently, there are no lives in the Niger Delta. What you want to talk about? Is it food? Is it crop yield? Is it life in water? Is it just normal living human beings that you want to talk about? The issues are abundant. So where do we start from? We want a Nigeria Delta where everything works the way it used to be in the 1970s.
Kentebe of Oil Watch International further stressed the need for urgent reforms to restore dignity and justice to the communities most affected by environmental degradation.
We will keep advocating non-violently for things to be done the right way. Most importantly is the fact that government must keep listening. If they say they don't want to listen and they listen to militants in the creek, that means that they are not taking priority, or they are not making looking at the issues that are becoming too problematic in the Niger Delta. We will continue to agitate peacefully for a total overhaul of the degraded environment in the Niger Delta.
30 years after Ken Saro-Wiwa paid the ultimate price for speaking truth to power, the struggle he died for remains unresolved. Activists warn the Nigerian stands at a crossroad, either to confront its environmental sins or risk deeper unrest and ecological collapse.
Now in business, the federal government has suspended the 4% free on-board import levy recently introduced by the Nigerian Customs Service. Finance Minister Wale Edun announced the suspension after widespread backlash from importers and industry stakeholders who warned that the levy would worsen inflation, rise the cost of goods, and hurt trade competitiveness. In a letter to the Customs Controller General, the Finance Ministry said the move will allow further consultation and a review of levy's economic impact. Officials stress that the suspension is not a cancellation but a pause to design a fairer system that won't overburden businesses. Importers have welcomed the decision as a relief in the current tough economic climate. Now, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, has urged African nations to fast-track their energy transition, taking full ownership of their natural resources and craft policies designed by the continent itself to secure its long-term energy future. The NNPCL GCEO Bayo Ojulari made this assertion while addressing industry leaders at the 7th African Petroleum Producers Organization, National Oil Companies, CEOs Forum. Ojulari highlighted the decline of European investment in fossil fuel refineries, with most set to phase out by 2030. He noted that this development makes it imperative for Africa to take decisive action in harnessing its abundant resources for the benefit of its people. The GCO outlined strategic infrastructure projects spearheaded by NNPCL, including the Ajaokuta-Kaduna-Kano gas pipeline project designed to strengthen connectivity across Nigeria's energy network. He further emphasized progress on the Morocco gas pipeline project and expansion of the West Africa gas pipeline, which will enhance regional integration and cross-border energy trade. Now, away from Nigeria, Nepal is assessing the multi-million-dollar damage from last week's violent protests when Parliament, Government Office and a newly opened Hilton Hotel were set ablaze. At least 72 people were killed in 2 days of anti-corruption protests, with scores more badly injured, according to official figures. So much has been destroyed, police spokesman Binod Gimeri said, adding that it will take time to calculate the full extent of the damage, including outside the capital. Nepal's new interim Prime Minister Sushila Karki, speaking as she begins work on Sunday, described the protest as a widespread loss of lives and property. At the Supreme Court, officials are working under the tent outside the charred building, alongside rows of burned-out vehicles trying to salvage water-soaked documents. The Hotel Association of Nepal reported more than 20 hotels damaged, including the Hilton fire. Losses were estimated at 25 billion Nepal rupees, that's about $177 million, with more than 2,000 workers affected. Now, Malawians voted on Tuesday in election amid soaring price and fuel shortages, with the economic gloom a challenge to President Lazarus Chakwera's bid for a second term. In a crowded field of 17 candidates, observers said Chakwera's closest rival was his predecessor, 85-year-old Peter Mutharika, a law professor who has spent decades living outside the southern African nation. While many, mainly younger voters, said they wanted change, others were willing to give Chakwera a second chance to fix an economy bogged down by inflation at above 27% and a chronic foreign exchange shortage that has forced limits on imports of fuel, fertilizer and food. Long queues formed at outdoor polling stations across the largely rural nation as polls opened, but the election authority said the early afternoon turnout was only 51%. The outgoing president and his predecessor also dwelled in the 2019 vote that was nullified over tampering and followed by a rerun in 2020 when Chakwera, a 70-year-old pastor, replaced Mutharika. Now it's time for us to join Kabir Lawan for more news on sports.
The National Sports Commission (NSC) has successfully intervened in the recent challenges in Team Nigerian's camp at the ongoing 2025 World Athletics Championships in Tokyo, Japan. The leadership of the NSC, led by Chairman Shehu Dikko and Director General Bukola Olopade, has ensured the swift payment of all athletes' bonuses and allowances in Tokyo. Olapade held a crucial meeting with the athletes and officials of the Athletics Federation of Nigeria (AFN) in Tokyo, where he reaffirmed the federal government's commitment to the welfare and well-being of the country's athletes at all times. The meeting also provided the Director General with the opportunity to resolve outstanding issues between the athletes and the AFN, fostering optimism for a stronger and more collaborative relationships going forward. He said the mandate given to NSC by President Tinubu is to prioritize the welfare of every Nigerian representing the nation, adding that the directive informed their visit to Tokyo. Olapade also urged the athletes to remain patriotic at all times, both in their performance and conduct on and off the track, as they represent how the rest of the world perceives Nigeria. Still on sport news, the NPFL has confirmed that about 70 standout players from the just concluded 2024 and 2025 NPFL Youth Championship have been invited to camp ahead of the formation of the first ever NPFL Youth team. The Youth Championship was staged across 3 zones to include Ikenne, Isiala Ngwa, and Kano, with scouts carefully handpicking the best prospects. The invited players will report to 2-week training camp scheduled for October 4th to 17th, 2025, either in Ogun or the FCT, where they will undergo further assessment. The NPFL noted that from this pool, only 20 players will eventually be selected to form the official NPFL youth team. On behalf of the club, players and supporters, their chairman supervising coordinator Suraju Umar Dalibi congratulated the invited players and wished them success while representing the state's team, Katsina United Football Club. That's Sport News. I am Kabir Lawal.
And with that, we have come to the end of News Hour on Trust TV. Do not forget to watch and catch us across all our social media platforms and join our YouTube live stream for more news, programs and documentaries. I am Fatima Ahmed Musa from me and the crew. Thanks for watching.